What's up, my name is TechNoba here for Troubleshoot and welcome back to another video. In this quick video, I'll quickly run through all of the optimization steps, or at least the basics and what you should have set up to get the absolute best performance out of New World. Now of course it is a new game, lots of optimizations and the rest will come to the game as time goes on, though if you reach the end of the video and you're receiving super low FPS that's really unlike your computer, it could be something that the game needs to fix later on, though that's very unlikely. Anyways, let's just jump right into it. So first of all, before we start with this game optimization and Windows optimization guide, what you need to do is make sure that your Windows and graphics card driver are up to date. To update Windows, hit Start, type in Update, and open up Check for Updates. Inside of here, you'll need to click Check Now for updates, and if you see this on your screen, simply click Install Now. When your computer restarts, if it does, check under Optional Quality Updates and make sure that if you see anything here, you click Download and Install as well. As I'm recording right now, I'll leave this to later on to actually install. That's of course nice and simple. Opening up Task Manager with Control Shift and Escape, we'll head across to the Performance tab at the top and then locate our graphics card. Upon doing so, you'll see the name in the top right hand corner, and all we need to do is look for the correct driver for this model that we have on our computer. If you're using a laptop, you'll likely have an Intel or AMD integrated graphics card, which is on your CPU, a much lower powered graphics card, and a dedicated graphics card, likely Nvidia or AMD. What you need to do is download the latest driver for the best graphics card you have in your computer. That is of course very simple stuff, and more than likely, you're already running the latest updates. That's good. While we're inside of the settings window here, we'll head back to Home in the top left, then into System, Display, and at the bottom here, we'll click Graphics Settings. Upon doing so, we'll see this window here. Simply make sure that hardware accelerated GPU scheduling is turned on, for which you'll need to restart your computer later. Then at the very bottom, you'll see Graphics Performance Preference. Make sure that this is set to Desktop App. We'll then click Browse and a new window will open up. What we need to do is navigate across to our game files. So to do so, open up Steam, locate New World, right-click it, hover over Manage, and then click Browse Local Files. In this new window here, copy the path at the top by simply clicking once, Ctrl-C to copy, and pasting it into here, hitting Enter. Then we'll navigate into Bin64 and double-click on newworld.exe. It'll now be added to the list here. Click Options and change it to High Performance. More than likely, if you're on a laptop, you'll see your integrated GPU up here under Power Saving and dedicated under High Performance. Click Save, and we're done in this menu here. If you'd like, you can also enable variable refresh rate if you have this available. Otherwise, you can leave this off and not worry about it. Heading back and back again, we'll head into the gaming section now. Inside of Gaming, Xbox Game Bar, make sure that this is turned off unless you actively use it to chat to friends or record your screen. Then head across to Game Mode and make sure that this is turned on. Finally, to finish off the Windows optimization, I'll close out of this window, hit Start, and type in Edit Power. We'll open up Edit Power Plan. In this new window here, head to Power Options at the top, and then simply select AMD Ryzen High Performance if you have a Ryzen chip, otherwise select High Performance. If you'd like to try an ultimate power plan that could give you more performance or possibly less performance, there is a command in the description down below that we can copy, hit Start, type in CMD, and run command prompt as administrator. In here, we can paste it in, hit Enter, and you should see a new power plan here when we refresh, the ultimate performance power plan. Selecting this could give you more FPS, though on some computers this will give you less FPS and less performance. Hence I mentioned choose High Performance or your CPU's dedicated high performance option. This of course is up to you to play around with, and you'll only notice a small difference in some cases unless you have balanced or power saving selected in the first place. Other than that, we're practically done here. So next up, we'll clear up some temporary files before we get to actually launching up the game. Hit Start and type in Clean. We'll be starting Disk Cleanup. When it opens up, simply select C drive, the one with Windows, and hit OK. Wait for it to run through to completion, and inside of here, I'd usually select everything that's on this list to clear the maximum amount of space possible. As you can see, my recycle bin has some files in it, and if you have this checked, you'll lose all of the files that you have in your recycle bin. Do go through it and make sure you're not deleting anything important. When you're done, click OK, delete files, and then wait for this to run through to completion. This is deleting some unnecessary files and freeing up some more hard drive space. You may notice a difference, you may not. If you're running low on space on an SSD or hard drive, you may notice a big performance improvement. Then hit start once again, disk cleanup, or just cleanup once again, and this time we'll run as administrator. Click OK, wait for it to scan through your files, and now you'll see a couple more things in here, such as the Windows Update Cleanup, which I'll check, and a couple of other options here that weren't here previously. Though do keep in mind the Windows Update Cleanup, as far as I understand, could stop you rolling back to a previous version of Windows if using something like Windows 11. Otherwise, if you're not worrying about that, you can leave it checked and hit OK. Then delete files. Now we've cleaned up our computer, there's not too much else we need to do here other than optimize our graphics card settings and optimize what programs we have running in the background. I'd recommend opening up Task Manager with Control Shift and Escape and running through almost all of the programs on the Processes tab, making sure you need all of these open. If you see something you don't need open, such as Microsoft Teams, open it up and close it, or right-click and End Task. We'll be closing as many programs as possible, as the less we have running in the background, the more FPS and performance we'll be able to get out of the game itself. Speaking of background programs, something you may benefit from is actually disabling in-game overlays such as the Discord overlay and other overlays alike. Leaving the Steam one is usually okay and quite necessary for some games, especially on one monitor if you find yourself needing to Google for different guides and tips. Speaking of background programs, including Discord, something that also may help is if your graphics card is completely maxing out while in-game, you can disable hardware acceleration in other programs, giving your graphics card slightly more breathing room. In Discord, you can head into User Settings, Advanced, and then turn off hardware acceleration here. If you're watching any streams and things alike, do know that they will likely drop your FPS quite a bit, so try not to watch streams, of course not in a browser or in Discord, same goes for YouTube. Something else that I've heard of relatively recently is you can disable hardware acceleration or different aspects of Steam. Open up Steam, click Steam in the top left, then Settings, and head across to Interface where you can turn off GPU accelerated rendering in web views. This may give your graphics card a bit more breathing room. In the Library tab, you'll also find these options here. You can turn on low bandwidth mode and low performance mode if you'd like to squeeze a tiny bit more performance out of your computer. Disabling both of these will clean up this screen over here and make it take slightly less resources, which may be something you'd like. Now we're basically done with most of the Windows optimizations. Let's get to optimizing our graphics card. Of course, I can only show you Nvidia, as that's the only brand of graphics card I own. So if you have an AMD graphics card, you can try copy as many settings as you can, otherwise you can skip forward to the next section. If you've already optimized your graphics card, you can skip forward as well. Right-click your desktop and open up the Nvidia control panel. Inside of here, under Adjust Image Settings with Preview, make sure that you have Use the Advanced 3D Image Settings checked, and then click Take Me There. That'll take you to the Manage 3D Settings tab. We can change the settings on Global Settings, or you can head across to Program Settings and select New World from this list over here if you see it. If you don't see it, however, change your settings on the Global Settings tab over here. I'll quickly optimize mine and then give you a chance to copy from it. Note that if you're missing any settings, don't worry about it too much, just skip over them. And if you find yourself with more settings than I have, because I don't have the most up-to-date graphics card, you can simply use common sense to go ahead and pick the best performance options for those. There we go, I've optimized everything on the list. I'll scroll to the bottom and give you time to copy from this page here. Then I'll scroll up to the next page. And finally, the last page up here. Some of the things that you need to make note of here are the low latency option. Down here, have this set to on or ultra, which may give you a little bit extra performance, and of course better input latency. And under power management mode, make sure that this is set to prefer maximum performance rather than power saving or optimized. At the very bottom, under texture filtering, make sure that you have the quality set to high performance. Then click apply and head across to the change resolution tab on the left hand side. In here, select your main monitor and make sure that the native resolution is selected. Usually it's the highest one here, as long as you don't have it DSR on. Then for refresh rate, choose the highest here as well, and then click apply if you have it. At the very bottom, you can change some of the color settings down here, such as the highest option here, choosing different color outputs, different bit depths, and of course choosing full instead of limited colors down here. I'll click apply and we're done inside of this menu here. Of course, if you have G-Sync, you can also enable that here for windowed or full screen mode games as well. Closing out of the window, let's do some final optimizations before launching up the game itself. I'll open up Steam, right-click New World, Manage, and then browse local files once again. I'll open the bin64 folder, then locate New World, right-click Properties, and inside of this window, I'll go to Compatibility and make sure that Disable Full Screen Optimizations is checked. And at the very bottom, change High DPI settings, and then make sure that Override is turned on and it's set to Application. Then click OK and Apply here. If you'd like, you can also try running it as admin, though if you're recording it with something like OBS, do keep in mind that you may need to run that as admin as well, and any other programs that use hotkeys, as they won't work anymore while the game's running as admin. Awesome. For this final part, let's actually launch up the game itself and get to optimizing the in-game graphics settings. Firing up the game, click the settings wheel in the top right, and then head across to Preferences to begin. On this page here, you'll see Bandwidth mode. Changing this lower for further away connections where you have higher ping, and if you're close to a server with say 50 ping, you can raise this as long as you have a good internet connection. Lowering this should help your internet connection if you're further away from the server, like I am down here in South Africa. Turning off analytics reporting can also give you a tiny bit more FPS, as your computer's not necessarily collecting analytics all the time, though turning this off may hinder how New World actually optimize their game, as they'll be receiving less information. So this is really up to you whether you want to leave it on. I, for one, usually have these off in almost all programs I use, so I'll turn it off here. Then, under Gameplay, there's only really one setting here that you may want to change, which is the camera shake, which is disorientating for some players. Then, under Visuals, we get to the settings that'll really give you or take away FPS on your computer. Make sure the window mode is set to full screen for the highest FPS, and the resolution is set to your native monitor's resolution. This way, it won't be blurry. Of course, dropping the resolution up here will give you some more FPS, though it will cause the screen to be very blurry as well. At least most of the time. We have some user settings down here, which you don't really need to worry about unless you need these, and then we have video quality. Changing this option here changes all of the options below it and is where you should start if you'd like to get more FPS out of the game. To monitor your FPS, you need to scroll down to the bottom and make sure Show FPS is turned on, or of course you have an FPS monitor in something like Steam. Now, of course, changing these settings here is going to give you a huge amount of FPS, so begin with the option up here that lowers everything or raises everything simultaneously. This will show you what would be the best settings for your computer, at least the fastest way possible. To get better visuals out of the game, there's a couple of settings we may want to change down below. I'd recommend changing Effects Details to High, and the only thing that we really need to turn down are way at the bottom here, being Water Details, this should be turned down, and Terrain Details. Lowering these options here and keeping everything else as is usually gives you pretty good FPS, especially with these last two down here, as they are super power hungry. Texture details depends on how much VRAM your graphics card has, and raising this with higher end graphics cards usually means that you're not losing any extra FPS. Shadow details is something you can go ahead and lower, as you won't be staring at shadows 24/7. If you find yourself staring at scenery, you may want this higher, otherwise you can drop this lower and not have to worry about it. Post-processing details won't take away too many FPS, so it doesn't really matter what this is set to. And finally, the last two settings here you can try and optimize are lighting and object details. Though changing both of these settings here are probably the most noticeable graphics options that you could find here, other than say texture details and water details. Lighting is super noticeable, especially when there's lots of shadows, lots of reflections, etc. I'd usually leave both of these at medium, but you can drop them further if necessary. At the very bottom, we need to turn VSync off, and we can set a max FPS here. If you're recording using something like OBS, you may need to lock your FPS here in order to not eat your entire graphics card in the game, leaving nothing for you to actually record with later on. Otherwise, if you're not recording or streaming, change this to uncapped and forget about it. Cap FPS in background and dynamic resolution scaling should both be on. However, this last option over here can cause your game to be blurry in times of lots of things happening. If you find this annoying, you can turn this off and gain a bit more visual clarity, though you may notice more huge FPS drops when you're in specific fights, etc. But besides that, there's not much else we need to change here to get more FPS out of the game. All we need to do really is just find a world and start playing. Being an MMO and something that's super open world, you'll obviously find more populated areas, whether it's objects and buildings or just people populated wise, that you'll drop quite a few FPS, so do keep that in mind as you will be struggling with that, especially on lower end computers. Other than this, the journey is really up to you. Of course, if you've optimized your game as much as you can, something you may want to do is disable the in-game FPS overlay, as it does display quite a bit more information that you may find unnecessary at times, such as the latency information in the top left, as well as latency information for FPS in the top right. And of course, rebooting your computer if necessary by changing some of the options, you should notice that you're getting much better FPS in game, it's more stable and less stuttery. That about wraps up our video. Thank you all for watching, my name's been Technobi here for Troubleshoot, hopefully you're getting much better FPS in game now, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao!